The millionaire surprises his humble housekeeper. What he found inside her home was shocking. Richard Holden, the silent titan of the city's skyline, should have been glued to his world of glass towers and power lunches. But today, on a cold autumn afternoon, a fierce, restless urge pulled him out of his sleek penthouse and down the winding streets of a sleepy suburb. His breath clouded in the crisp air as he pressed the doorbell of a small, unassuming house, Maria Thompson's place. His mind spun. For years he'd watched Maria work quietly in his mansion. No fuss, no complaints, just steady hands and a calm presence. Yet he had never truly looked beyond the chipped paint and tired windows of her home. Now, standing in front of that creaky door, something deeper called to him, a curiosity mixed with a cautious kind of gratitude. The door groaned open. Inside, an eerie stillness hit him, thick and heavy like the fog outside. Faded wallpaper peeled from the walls, curling like old secrets begging to break free. The wooden floorboards creaked underfoot, whispering stories no one had heard in years. And then, the photos. Richard's fingers trembled as he brushed dust from a shelf cluttered with cracked frames. Each one frozen in time. A young Maria with a stubborn smile, a child with eyes too big for his face, a faded wedding portrait too frayed to identify. The house breathed a story of struggle, stitched together with pain and perseverance. He spotted a stack of ancient ledgers, their pages yellowed and brittle. Numbers and names danced on the paper, debts tallied with ruthless precision. His heart tightened. How many sleepless nights had this woman endured? How many sacrifices hidden behind her quiet smile? Each corner of the room seemed to pulse with unspoken confessions. Family mementos tucked in shadows, a torn letter peeking from beneath a worn quilt, a rusted locket nailed to the wall, a child's tattered doll sitting solemnly on a broken chair. It was a labyrinth of memories tangled with hardship, some beautiful, others haunting. Richard's breath caught. The room felt alive, almost accusing. This was no humble refuge. It was a battlefield of survival. And it wasn't just Maria's story. It was connected somehow to his own empire, to debts and sacrifices he had never imagined. The fragile mask of his professional world cracked. His hand hovered over a weathered envelope hidden beneath a loose floorboard. His pulse thundered. What was inside? What truth had been buried beneath the dust and silence for so long? Then a sharp knock shattered the quiet. The sound echoed like thunder in the cramped room. Richard froze, heart pounding in his ears. Who could it be, and could he face what might come next? The answer hung in the air. A question, a threat, a promise. The journey into Maria's world had just begun, and nothing would be the same again. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without notice. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming up. And since you're here, smash that like button because it really helps me with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Richard's heart raced, thudding in his chest as if it wanted to burst out. The knock echoed again, louder this time. It felt like a call from the universe, demanding an answer. He stood frozen, every instinct screaming at him to leave, yet something deeper rooted him to the spot. Suddenly, the door burst open, and there she stood, Maria, eyes wide with shock. Her hands trembled at her sides, and for a brief second, Richard wondered if she had sensed the storm gathering inside her home. "Richard?" she breathed, surprise coloring her tone. He met her gaze, searching for words that wouldn't come. What was he doing here? What was he meant to say? But then, almost instinctively, he stepped past her threshold. This was her world after all, yet it felt too much like his. Before he could gather his thoughts, Maria's expression shifted. Fear replaced shock, her face paled. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, eyes darting past him as if searching for something, someone. "What's going on?" he asked, sensing a chasm of fear between them. He took a step closer, but noticed a shift in her demeanor, almost like she was guarding a secret. "Just, please don't," she insisted, panic bubbling in her voice. The room felt heavy, the air thick and suffocating. It was as if the walls were closing in, holding their breath along with them. Richard's instincts kicked in. He had to know. "What are you hiding?" he pressed, feeling urgency claw his throat. And then he saw it. Out of the corner of his eye, a figure moved in the shadows. A tall man stepped into the light, a chilling grin spreading across his face. "Well, well, if it isn't Mr. Holden himself," he said, voice smooth as silk, yet sharp, like a knife. Richard's gut twisted. He had never seen this man before, but the tension in the room was palpable. "Who are you?" he shot back, fists tightening at his sides. The atmosphere shifted, something primal awakened in the air. "We've been expecting you," the man replied, cocking his head with a mixture of amusement and menace. "Maria here has some debts to pay, debts that connect you to her, whether you like it or not." Richard's heart plummeted. The pieces started clicking, to the ledgers, to the sacrifices. The debts Maria had tallied were not just hers. They were intertwined with his world, his empire. "What have you done to her?" Richard demanded, feeling anger bubble beneath his skin like molten lava. Maria stood in the middle, eyes darting back and forth, torn between fear and an unspoken loyalty. "Please, Richard, it's not what you think," she murmured, her voice trembling. The room pulsed with tension. Richard felt the earth shift beneath him. What truth had Maria kept buried within those walls? What string of lies wove their lives together? The man stepped closer, a predatory smile stretching across his face. "You both have a lot to lose, so let's play a game, shall we? You decide who walks away, or if anyone does." Richard's mind whirled. Sickening realization hit him. This was about more than just Maria's life. It was a countdown to something catastrophic. Lives were in the balance, secrets waiting to spill like blood on cracked floorboards. And as the man's eyes glimmered with malice, Richard knew he was right in the eye of the storm. What was next? What would the stakes reveal? Could they escape this dark web of debt and deceit that bound them all? The man's grin twisted as he took another step forward, the tension thickening like a noose around Richard's neck. "Let's not waste time. You want her alive? You need to decide whose life you value more, yours or hers." His eyes glinted, and Richard felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. "Stay away from her," Richard shouted, his voice breaking the oppressive silence that hung in the room. He took a protective step toward Maria, but she remained rooted. A figure stumbled in, eyes wide with panic. It was a teenage boy, Maria's son, Jacob. "Mom, I couldn't find you," he cried, collapsing into her arms. Richard felt the air sizzle with chaos as Maria hugged her son tightly. The warmth of her protective instinct radiated across the room, but the man's expression soured, darker than the clouds gathering outside. "Oh, this complicates things," he muttered, eyes narrowing. The boy looked back and forth between them, confusion etching deeper lines on his young face. "Who is that?" he asked, voice trembling. Richard's mind raced. Jacob was here. He was part of the puzzle. But how? What did he not know? A part of him wanted to comfort the boy, yet he was tethered to the revelation that hung in the air, electric and ungraspable. Then Maria's grip tightened around her son. "You shouldn't be here, Jacob. It's not safe." Her voice shook, trembling with an urgency that spoke volumes. The man stepped closer, a predatory glint growing in his eyes. "Now we have everyone we need. Let's make this interesting." He grabbed a remote from his pocket and pressed a button. Richard's mind spun as the walls shuddered. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a basement door behind an old, faded bookshelf. It creaked like a warning when it swung open, darkness pooling behind it. What is that? Richard demanded, feeling a lump in his throat. Maria's face paled. No, you can't. She took a step back, eyes wide, grasping Jacob's shoulders. The man chuckled softly, but was laced with menace. Oh, but I can. You'll all have a chance to expose your deepest secrets down there. Or, he paused, letting the weight of his threat settle. Or you can pay the price for what you've hidden. Richard felt dizzy, his thoughts a jumbled mess. What secrets? What had Maria hidden? I won't let you take her, either of them. He felt the fire of defiance swell within him. Maria's eyes met his, a flash of something, a recognition, a plea. He knows, she whispered, her voice trembling. Richard's heart dropped. The pieces shifted in his mind, revealing a clearer picture tinted out. His eyes widened as he read a message. Mom, it's Dad. He's here. He's coming for us. Time slowed. The room melted away, leaving only the crashing weight of that revelation. Richard's heart stuttered like a malfunctioning engine. Your father? Maria's gaze turned sideways, panic shadowing her features. He can't know. He can't find out. The walls felt closer now, and Richard realized that the danger wasn't just from the man before them. It loomed from the past, ready to fracture everything he thought he understood. Just as he opened his mouth to demand answers, the ground trembled. A sound like thunder rolled from below, as if the very house was groaning under the weight of hidden truths. And in that moment, Richard understood that the stakes were far more than he had ever imagined. The game had just shifted, and with it, everything was at risk. Their lives, their secrets, their very identities hanging by a thread. What lay at the bottom of those stairs? What would they have to face to survive this storm? And was there a chance of ever finding their way back from the edge? The walls felt closer now, and Richard understood the stakes were more dangerous than he ever imagined. Jacob's wide eyes flickered with confusion as he clung to Maria, who seemed lost somewhere between panic and desperation. The tension in the room was like a live wire, pulsing with potential violence. Your father? Richard exclaimed, feeling the ground shift beneath him again. What do you mean? Maria held Jacob even tighter, her breath quickening. He shouldn't be here. He can't know what's going on, she whispered, words dripping with fear. The walls echoed her voice, bouncing it back like a mocking reminder of the chaos at hand. The man smirked, almost relishing the spilled secrets. Oh, but you see, your father might already know more than you think, he said, leaning back against the wall, hands crossed. He's been watching, Maria. Every move you make. Richard's heart raced. How could this man see everything? What do you want from us? He demanded, unchecked anger bubbling to the surface. Such a poor choice of words. It isn't about what I want, he said, with a chilling laugh. This is about what's owed. The debt's your quiet little housekeeper has incited in a web tied tightly to your empire. Just as the fear settled in Richard's chest like an anchor, the ground trembled again, a sudden roar echoing through the corridor. The hidden panel creaked wider, and from the shadows a figure emerged. A woman with striking familiarity, her features etched in a stern expression, stepped into the light. Richard froze. Mom? Jacob stammered, eyes wide as if a ghost just walked in. Jacob, you need to. She started, but the words snagged in her throat, disbelief washing over her face as she registered Maria standing there with her son. Couldn't keep your mouth shut, could you, Maria? The woman said, voice steely and cold. After everything I've done for you. Richard blinked, reality slamming into him with sickening force. Wait, you know her? The shock was palpable as Maria recoiled, hands trembling as she looked between Richard and the woman. Ruth, why are you here? Because, dear, it seems you didn't finish what you started, Ruth replied, each word honed with sharp precision. The room drew thin, taking on a suffocating weight as Richard felt his entire world tilt. Maria knew Ruth. More than that, they had a history twisted up in something dark. Your father, Jacob, he's not just after Maria. He's looking for what she's hiding. What you, all of us, are hiding. Ruth spat, eyes narrowing, her presence swallowing the room like a dark cloud. Maria shook her head slowly, lips quivering as she struggled for words. I didn't tell anyone about the ledgers. I thought you would understand. Ruth's laugh was harsh, slicing through the tension. Understand? You think I'd let you drown while I keep my head above water? You're just like him, Maria, thinking you can escape your past. Richard felt a sharp pain slice through the confusion. The truth was spiraling. What happened? He demanded, heart pounding, urgency clawing at him. And what is the past you're always escaping, Maria? For a brief moment, Maria's eyes flickered to Richard, a fleeting connection, a silent plea. But then fear re-entered her gaze, and she faltered, lost in unspoken darkness. Before she could respond, Jacob gasped, clutching Maria's hand tightly. What do you mean? What are you hiding? But as Maria opened her mouth to speak, the house seemed to buckle, a loud crash drowning her out. The lights flickered, ominously, casting shadows that danced around them like phantoms of past sins surfacing. Richard felt his chest tighten, panic edging closer. What had Maria buried so deep? What was so terrible that it could unite them all in this moment of chaos? Then a sudden thought hit him like ice water. What if everything he thought he knew about Maria, about the very fabric of their lives, was a lie? As the air around them thickened with uncertainty, Richard's mind raced. Would they face the truth, or would the revelations tear them apart? In the swirling darkness of the unknown, the answers felt more like a curse than a blessing. Maria, please, we need to know. But before she could answer, the house groaned again, shadows swirling in a tempest of secrets, leaving them clinging to one another, teetering on the edge of revelation or ruin. The walls felt closer now, and Richard understood the stakes were more dangerous than he ever imagined. Jacob's wide eyes flickered with confusion as he clung to Maria, who seemed lost somewhere between panic and desperation. The tension in the room was like a live wire, pulsing with potential violence. Your father? Richard exclaimed, feeling the ground shift beneath him again. What do you mean? Maria held Jacob even tighter, her breath quickening. He shouldn't be here. He can't know what's going on, she whispered, words dripping with fear. The walls echoed her voice, bouncing it back like a mocking reminder of the chaos at hand. The man smirked, almost relishing the spilled secrets. Oh, but you see, your father might already know more than you think, he said, leaning back against the wall, hands crossed. He's been watching, Maria. Every move you make. Richard's heart raced. How could this man see everything? What do you want from us? He demanded, unchecked anger bubbling to the surface. Such a poor choice of words. It isn't about what I want, he said with a chilling laugh. This is about what's owed, the debts your quiet little housekeeper has incited in a web tied tightly to your empire. Just as the fear settled in Richard's chest like an anchor, the ground trembled again, a sudden roar echoing through the corridor. The hidden panel creaked wider, and from the shadows a figure emerged. A woman with striking familiarity, her features etched in a stern expression, stepped into the light. Richard froze. Mom? Jacob stammered, eyes wide as if a ghost just walked in. Jacob, you need to, she started, but the words snagged in her throat, disbelief washing over her face as she registered Maria standing there, with her son. Couldn't keep your mouth shut, could you? Maria, the woman said, voice steely and cold. After everything I've done for you. Richard blinked, reality slamming into him with sickening force. Wait, you know her? The shock was palpable as Maria recoiled, hands trembling as she looked between Richard and the woman. Ruth, why are you here? Because, dear, it seems you didn't finish what you started, Ruth replied, each word honed with sharp precision. The room drew thin, taking on a suffocating weight as Richard felt his entire world tilt. Maria knew Ruth. More than that, they had a history twisted up in something dark. Your father, Jacob, he's not just after Maria. He's looking for what she's hiding, what you, all of us, are hiding. Ruth spat, eyes narrowing, her presence swallowing the room like a dark cloud. Maria shook her head slowly, lips quivering as she struggled for words. I didn't tell anyone about the ledgers. I thought you would understand. Ruth's laugh was harsh, slicing through the tension. Understand? You think I'd let you drown while I keep my head above water? You're just like him, Maria, thinking you can escape your past. Richard felt a sharp pain slice through the confusion. The truth was spiraling. What happened? He demanded, heart pounding, urgency clawing at him. And what is the past you're always escaping, Maria? For a brief moment, Maria's eyes flickered to Richard, a fleeting connection, a silent plea. But then fear re-entered her gaze, and she faltered, lost in unspoken darkness. Before she could respond, Jacob gasped, clutching Maria's hand tightly. What do you mean? What are you hiding? But as Maria opened her mouth to speak, the house seemed to buckle, a loud crash drowning her out. The lights flickered ominously, casting shadows that danced around them like phantoms of past sins surfacing. Richard felt his chest tighten, panic edging closer. What had Maria buried so deep? What was so terrible that it could unite them all in this moment of chaos? And then a voice, grim and unfamiliar, cut through the tension. You think this is a game? From the back of the room emerged another figure, tall, cloaked in darkness. Every pair of eyes focused on him as he swaggered into the fractured light. Who the hell are you? Richard challenged, heart racing as the stranger's smirk deepened. I'm here for what's mine, the man said coldly, locking eyes with Maria. And your secrets, they're about to come to light. Richard felt the air thin. What secrets? The tension broke like glass, pounding against their ears. The lights flickered more violently, casting a strobe effect as the man stepped closer, revealing a glint of metal in his hand. Showtime, Maria. Time to reveal the truth. Her face blanched. Richard's stomach dropped. And then, without warning, as if the world itself cracked under the intensity, the walls splintered. A deafening crash exploded around them. Dust choked the air, a cloud of confusion enveloping them. Shadows danced in the chaos, and Richard's heart stopped. Run, he shouted, instinct kicking in. But amidst the turbulence, amidst the scrambling fear and rising screams, one thing became painfully clear. Everything Richard thought he knew about Maria, about her life, about the ties that bound them all, was spiraling into an abyss of betrayal and truth. The last thing he saw was Maria's terrified face, a pleading look mixed with the weight of horrors yet unspoken. What was buried beneath the floorboards? What could the walls tell him if only they could speak? And the stranger, who was he really? And what was the connection to Maria's past? The storm was just beginning, and everything was about to change. The ground trembled again, the air vibrating with a dread that crawled beneath Richard's skin. Shadows twisted and morphed around them, each crack and creak of the old house sounding like a heartbeat drawing closer. Jacob clung to Maria, eyes wide and desperate. Ruth's face was a mask of fury and disbelief, a storm brewing behind her eyes as Richard demanded answers. Your father, Jacob, he's not just after Maria, Ruth hissed, her voice low and menacing, saturating the air with tension that felt heavy enough to suffocate. Richard felt that hook of anxiety sink further into his gut, twisting every vulnerable feeling together. Enough, the stranger snapped, cutting through Ruth's words like a knife. His gaze locked onto Richard, a predator sizing up its prey. Secrets are best unveiled, don't you think? Richard barely had time to register the words when the house shuddered once more. Dust and debris fell from the ceiling like a shaken snow globe. Panic bubbled to the surface, his instincts kicking in. We need to get out of here. But before he could even move, the walls groaned, and something shifted behind Maria. A jagged hole formed, revealing the darkness behind the panel. The air reeked of damp earth and something decayed. From the chasm emerged an object, a wooden box battered and old, dragged from the depths like a forgotten tomb. Open it, the man ordered, his tone dripping with mockery. excitement curling on the edges of his lips. "No, you can't," Maria's voice cracked, her body instinctively moving to shield Jacob. Her eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and regret. "You've kept it hidden long enough," Ruth shot back, her voice rising in anger. "Open it now, Maria." Richard's heart raced as the box lay between them, tempting and threatening. Maria teetered on the edge of panic, her breaths quick and shallow. "If I do, it will ruin us, everything we've built." Before she could finish, the stranger stepped closer, his grin spreading. "Do it or face the consequences. This is your only way out." Maria's hands shook as she reached toward the box. Richard felt a lump in his throat, horror mounting with each movement. Would opening this box unlock a past they weren't ready to confront? The room held its breath, as if it too understood the weight of what was about to unfold. With a trembling hand, she lifted the lid. A swift rush of cold air surged into the room, and every light flickered like a dying star. Inside lay an assortment of papers, each one doused in yellowing tears of time. Richard felt gravity shift as Maria's face blanched. "Those are the ledgers," she breathed, voice barely a whisper. Ruth leaned closer, eyes hungry for the truth. "What ledgers, ass?" The contents spilled out. A single name caught Richard's eye, a name he recognized, a name twisted in the fabric of his own empire. "No, it can't be," he stammered, mind racing back through the years. Suddenly, Maria gasped, clutching her chest. "We were supposed to forget. I buried it all." But before anyone could respond, a loud banging echoed from outside the house, thundering like a storm gathering strength. The man's expression shifted, realizing they weren't the only ones playing this deadly game. No, this was a covert storm brewing on the horizon, and he was just as caught in it. Suddenly, the front door swung open with bone-rattling force. Figures stormed in, dark silhouettes, armed with intensity and purpose. "Get down," one shouted, forcing everyone to the floor. Chaos erupted. Richard found himself sprawled on the ground, heart racing. Shadows masked faces, and the piercing sounds of shouts filled the air. "What have you done, Maria?" Someone yelled from the entrance, their voice drowning the others in an echo of anguish. Richard's mind spiraled. The implications were staggering. Who were these people? How deep did the web reach? With his heart thundering, panic now leaping to undeniable desperation, he turned to Maria. "What have you hidden? Who are we really facing here?" But as he looked into her eyes, the truth began to unravel in frightening ways he couldn't have prepared for. Those eyes spoke of past mistakes, of betrayal sewn into the very fabric of their bodies. Because just as the strangers raised their weapons, a breathless statement sliced through the chaos, chilling him to the bone. "I didn't just hide the debts, I hid the truth about your father too," Maria whispered, voice quaking as the room seemed to freeze. "Your father is the one behind all of this." Everything shattered. All he knew cracked under the weight of those words, leaving only echoes of betrayal. Richard's world spiraled into shadow as darkness faded against the chaos in his mind. Time stopped. The stakes had risen beyond comprehension. "Your father," Richard repeated, numbness creeping in. As the two worlds collided, a climax drew nearer, and in that split second, the truth hung in the air, heavy and lethal. What had Maria concealed about their lives? What would the fallout be? The walls trembled once again, and all he could think was that every secret might finally learn to speak. Yet all he wanted was silence. Maria's voice hung in the air, the weight of her revelation drenching them all in a silence that felt thick and suffocating. Richard stared at her, trying to process the truth she had just spilled. His father, the man who had built his empire? How could she possibly be connected to him? Confusion surged through him like water rushing over rocks, and he opened his mouth to demand more, to pull at the threads of this unraveling mystery. But just then the strangers advancing through the door shifted, their focus snapping away from them, their faces contorted in shock as they backed away. Richard's heart raced. What was happening now? He turned his head toward the door, expecting to see another threat looming. Instead, a woman stepped into the chaos, her presence commanding attention. "Stop," she commanded, her voice cutting through the tension like glass shattering. "Everyone freeze." It was Claire, his mother. Richard's mind reeled in disbelief. "Mom?" he breathed, searching her face for answers. She looked different, older, her eyes sharp with urgency. Maria's jaw dropped, tears pooling in her eyes. "Claire, what are you doing here?" Richard's confusion morphed into a deeper kind of dread. His mother shouldn't be here. She had always kept herself distant from his business world, staying wrapped in her own bubble of stability. Until now. "Things are worse than you think," Claire said. Her gaze darted between Richard, Maria, Jacob, and the hooded figures now eyeing her warily. I couldn't stay away. I came to warn you." "Warn us? About what?" Richard asked, panic threading through his voice. The house rattled again, a deep rumble, reverberating like thunder underneath their feet. His mother stepped closer, locking eyes with Maria, and the room cracked open, revealing a fissure of unspoken history. "Maria, you need to tell him. You need to tell them everything." "What do you mean?" Maria's voice quivered, cheeks wet with unshed tears. "I can't. It will destroy everything." Jacob looked from one woman to the other, fear dancing in his eyes. "Mom, what's happening? Who is she?" An edge of desperation crept into Claire's eyes. "Your mother has a legacy tied to." Richard's the kind you don't understand. Richard felt the truth slam against him again. Legacy? What kind of legacy? Suddenly, the tension cracked open like bone, and a loud crash smashed the atmosphere. The wall behind the strangers crumbled, dust exploding outward like a volcano. Richard's instincts flared as he dove in front of Maria and Jacob. But amidst the chaos, amid the flying debris, his mind spun, and then centered on one glaring point. As the dust settled, revealing the ragged hole, something glistened within its darkness. Richard squinted, and when he looked closer, his breath hitched. A flash of gold caught his eye. Inside the rubble lay a broken mirror, and reflected in it was not just the chaos, but shattered pieces of faces, muffled, whispering through the madness. Like fragments of a forgotten song, Richard's head snapped back to Claire, who stood rooted, her hands shaking. "What is that?" he demanded, heart thudding violently. Claire looked away, the flicker of guilt crossing her features. "It's what binds us all together, Richard. The truth is stuck in there, buried in the past." But just then, a chill caught everyone off guard, slicing through the noise. The shadowy figure among the intruders stepped forward, eyes glinting with recognition. "Ah, the mirror. Such a shame it has to break. Families are so delicate, after all." "What do you mean?" Richard shouted, the threads of the whole mess twisting tighter, constricting like a noose. A sinister smile spread across the man's face. "Everything you thought you knew is a distraction. It's not just Maria's history you need to face. It's your own. The mirror reveals the truth, and your mother knows all about it." The room froze, Richard's heartbeat hammering as Claire's expression twisted with horror. "Mom," he whispered, feeling the color drain from his face. "What is in there?" The air crackled, and Claire's words poured out in a flood. "The history of the dealership, the debts, the ties to your father, it's all inside. It was never just about Maria." Shock plunged through Richard, unraveling everything he had thought to be true. The ground slipped beneath him as darkness spiraled around them, leaving only questions hanging in the stillness. "What have you done?" he breathed. And then he felt it, an icy grip tightening around his neck. Reality shifting, and the shards of betrayal glimmering. He could feel it in his bones. The truth they all dreaded was roaring to be unleashed. Was their existence merely a reflection of the secrets they tried to bury? He wanted to scream, run, but there was nowhere left to hide. And in that crushing moment he realized, all of their lives were interwoven in a tapestry of lies and half-truths, and it was about to be unraveled completely. The air thickened with tension, as if the house itself held its breath. Richard stared at Claire, his heart racing. The truth lay heavy in the room, and he could feel it, pushing down on them like a vice. "What do you mean the history is inside?" he pressed, desperation coating his voice. Claire took a step forward, her eyes wide with a mix of urgency and fear. "The mirror, it's not just a mirror. It holds everything, every deal, every secret your father has buried, including Maria's connection to him." Maria shuddered. "No, no, this can't be happening." Her voice trembled as she clutched Jacob tighter, her eyes darting from Richard to Claire, the panic palpable. "No one will believe me," Claire whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. "This was all kept under wraps. The debts, the lies." Just then, the ground rumbled again, the walls seeming to shake with the weight of old secrets. Shadows twisted around them, and Richard could see fear creeping into the faces of the strangers, creeping closer, their weapons raised, their eyes darting. "Enough of this," one shouted, as if trying to regain control. Richard felt a surge of anger flood through him. These people didn't belong here. The stranger's voice broke through the chaos. "This is all you're doing, Maria. Your past is coming back to haunt you." "Shut up," Richard growled, stepping forward to shield Maria. He felt the protectiveness rise in him like a storm. But amidst the breaking of emotions, another sound pierced through. The sound of sirens, distant but growing louder. With every wail, a thread of hope surged within him. "We need to leave," he shouted, his mind racing. But as he turned to guide Maria and Jacob away, a thunderous crash erupted from the hole in the wall, sending dust cascading down like an avalanche. The energy shifted, and then everything fell silent. From that darkness, someone emerged. A figure cloaked in shadows stepped into the dim light. And as they became clearer, Richard's breath hitched in his throat. It was his father. "What are you doing here?" Richard gasped, his face pale. "Softly, Richard," his father replied, his tone eerily calm. "You're in over your head." This was a twist he hadn't seen coming. The tension that had already gripped the air twisted tighter. "You can't be here. Not now." But his father only smiled. A cold smile that sent shivers down Richard's spine. "Oh, but I'm exactly where I need to be." He stepped forward, voice dripping with disdain as he surveyed the chaos. "And it looks like you found my little secret, Maria." Richard shook his head, his mind racing. "You know her? How is this possible?" Before anyone could respond, the floor splintered beneath them, wood cracking like thunder. Richard glanced down, just as shadows flickered, and with a guttural roar, the floor gave way. The ground split apart, swallowing everything in its path. Screams erupted, time stretched like taffy, and terror clawed at him. Maria's shriek sliced through the air as she lost her footing, slipping into the void. "No!" Richard lunged, his hands grasping at air, but it was too late. She vanished into the darkness below, the connection severed, leaving only echoes of the shock. Then Claire screamed, eyes wide as realization dawned. "What have you done?" Richard's heart thudded. He spun around, fury igniting. "This is your fault, all of it." But before he could move toward his father, Jacob slipped from Maria's side, darting for the edge, his eyes wide and terrified. "Mom, stop," Richard yelled, but it was too late. Jacob teetered, and with one grasping hand, he slipped toward the gaping maw of the abyss. Richard lunged to grab him, grasping desperately as Jacob dangled above the darkness. The world tilted, and Richard's heart raced, now feeling the full weight of everything he thought he knew. Would he lose Jacob too? The panic surged, blurring his vision. His father's voice echoed, cold and commanding. "You think you can save them both?" The truth is unforgiving. But as Richard held on, struggling against the weight of fear, fury, and despair, he felt something shift within him, a realization that shattered the ground below. Maybe there was more than just debt tying their fates together. "I'll never give up on them," he shouted, clinging tightly to Jacob. And just as he peered into the abyss, hoping to pull everyone back from the edge, another figure appeared at the edge of the void. A woman, swathed in shadows, her face twisted in familiarity. "You didn't see it yet, did you?" she sneered, a hint of amusement in her tone. Richard's heart dropped. "Who the hell are you?" But that smirk told him everything he feared. Everything was about to unravel. And in that moment of realization, the ground slipped away further, and he knew they were deeper in than he had ever imagined, trapped in a web where the worst was yet to come. The shadows flickered as if they were alive, dancing around Richard and Jacob, linked together in fear. The figure standing before them, draped in darkness, held an unsettling smile that twisted Richard's stomach tighter than a fist. "You didn't see it yet, did you?" she said, her voice sharp, slicing through the chaos like a knife through butter. "Who are you?" Richard demanded, heart racing. He felt the weight of the room pressing down on him, the air thick with tension pulsating like a living being. "Oh, come on, Richard. You really don't remember?" Her laughter echoed against the walls, a sound filled with mockery. "Let me jog your memory." The figures around them shifted uneasily, eyes darting from Richard to this stranger, confusion painting their faces. Jacob had lost his footing, but Richard's grip did not waver. He was determined to pull him back. But in that split second of peril, something inside Richard snapped. He could sense it. "Enough games," Richard shouted, fury mingling with desperation. "We need answers, and we need them now." The woman stepped closer, her features catching the dwindling light, and suddenly everything changed. Under the dust and shadows, Richard's breath hitched in his throat. "Mom," he stuttered, looking into a face that mirrored his own. It was too familiar, too haunting. "Good to see you again, Richard. Did you think everything you knew was real?" The ground trembled as Richard stared, reality swirling like a maelstrom around him. I don't understand," he stumbled, trying to connect the dots. "Why are you here?" But the woman only smirked. "Because, sweetheart, you've been living a lie." "What do you mean?" His voice cracked under the pressure of confusion and fear. "Your father is not who you think he is. And neither am I," she said, her tone dropping to a chilling whisper. "We're all part of something bigger. The debts, the lies, it's a family business. You're not just tied to your father. You're connected to me." "You're my son!" A gasp rippled through the bystanders, and the room froze. Richard felt the ground turn molten beneath him. His skin prickled, heart slamming against his chest. "What? This isn't possible." "Isn't it?" she replied, her gaze cold and piercing. "You were never meant to find out, but now you've stepped into a world where secrets are currency, and your innocence, well, it's about to be the cost." Jacob's eyes widened, confusion morphing into terror. "Mom, what is she saying?" "Stay back, Jacob," Richard shouted, pulling him closer. "Don't listen to her." But this revelation surged through him like a train wreck, tearing apart every notion of who he was. The truth pierced him, raw and festering. "You're my mother?" he choked out, disbelief cascading over him. The laughter of the hooded figures echoed in the background, danger lurking in the silence. "What's it going to be, Richard?" the woman asked, her challenge hanging thick in the air. "Will you embrace your legacy, or will you let it end here?" Richard's thoughts raced, his mind spiraling through time. Every moment spent believing he was just the son, the clueless heir of his father's empire. But now, here was a woman, his mother, claiming a connection that twisted every choice he had ever made into a charade. "I don't understand. Why now? Why all of this?" "Because time is running out." Her eyes flared with urgency, the shadows leaning closer, breathing with the weight of unsaid truths. "You're in danger, and I'm the only one who can protect you." But in that moment, the ground beneath him seemed to sigh, as it gave a menacing groan. The walls cracked again, and Richard realized they were no longer just fighting their past. They were battling an impending doom. The abyss was ready to swallow them whole. "Mom," Jacob cried, pulling at Richard's arm, panic coursing through him. But as reality spun, panic rose sharply in Richard. Inside, he felt everything spiraling out of control. Could he trust her? This stranger who claimed to be his blood? The darkness behind her could just as easily swallow his family's whole, swallowing every ounce of hope. Then, as if the universe aligned against him, a loud crash erupted nearby, the noise splintering his thoughts. The remaining walls trembled with dread, and Richard found himself asking the same question laced with fear. Would he even survive to find the truth? Chaos swirled around Richard. The ground rumbled beneath him, shadows flickering menacingly. "You're my mother?" he stammered, disbelief flooding his voice. His heart pounded like a drum in his chest, each beat amplifying the weight of her words. "Yes, Richard, and it's time for you to know the truth." Her eyes locked onto his, a storm of emotions swirling within them. "Your father, he's not the man you think he is. Everything about our lives, our family, it's all tangled in a web of lies." Richard's thoughts raced, trying to piece together this colossal revelation. He could feel Jacob clutching him tighter, the boy's fear palpable. "What do we do now?" Richard asked, voice strained, desperation edging into his tone. Before Claire could respond, the shadows around them lurched forward, the dark figure stepping dangerously close. "Your precious truth will be your downfall," she hissed. "You've all been blinded by the love you thought you knew." The atmosphere crackled with tension, Richard's chest tightening further at her words. "We're not blinded," he shot back, defiance igniting in the pit of his stomach. "Get away from us." Suddenly, a jarring crash echoed through the room as the ground quaked, the force snapping him back to reality. He pivoted towards the broken wall, heart racing. "We have to move. Now." With a surge of adrenaline, Richard tightened his grip on Jacob and led them toward the exit, pushing through the chaos. Claire followed, her eyes wide with urgency. The tension seemed to pulse as they fled through the debris, shards of truth and lies crashing around them. "Where's Maria?" Jacob cried, glancing back desperately. Richard felt his heart torn as the memories of her terrified face flickered in his mind. She had vanished into the shadows. "She's coming!" Claire shouted, her voice slicing through the din. And just as Richard moved to respond, another crash reverberated, sending them staggering. Dust swirled as the room threatened to collapse around them, danger lurking in every crevice. "No!" Richard shouted, determination flooding through him. "We won't leave her. We need to save her." Clarity struck. He couldn't turn away from the truth any longer. "Mom, we need to face this together." Ruth's face twisted with rage, her eyes flaring. "You think you're strong enough to handle what's coming? You're nothing without your father's protection." Richard's chest tightened further, anger bubbling underneath. "I might not have his protection, but I have my family." "That's enough." In that moment, Maria appeared, silhouetted against the creeping shadows. "I'm here," she shouted, her voice fierce as she pushed through the haze. "Together, we'll unravel this." A spark ignited as their eyes met, an unspoken bond, a testament to resilience. Richard felt hope surge within him, bright and warm, cutting through the darkness like dawn breaking through the night. They were united now, a force against the storm. "Let's end this," Richard declared, stepping forward as the shadows closed in. He was done hiding, done playing by the rules set long ago. In a blink, everything shifted. The shadows recoiled, revealing secrets long hidden within. A truth more potent than he could have imagined surged forth, tying them all together, their lives entwined by blood and betrayal. "Look," Maria shouted, pointing at the swirling shadows. "It's time we take back our story." Fueled by conviction, they charged together, a united front. The darkness writhed and fought back, but Richard felt a strength radiating from the very ground beneath him. Time slowed. Richard grasped Jacob's hand, felt Maria's presence beside him, and guided Claire closer. They were a family, not defined by the shadows, but forged from loyalty and love. As the dark figure lurched, they embraced the light that swelled within them, breaking through the storm with a roar. "We will not be your puppets," Richard shouted, as the darkness shattered, light flooding the space around them. The echoes of past lies faded, dissolving with the shadows. The room brightened, revealing truth dancing in the light. Richard looked around at the faces surrounding him, Jacob, Maria Claire, and felt a warmth blanket over him. "We're free," Jacob whispered, relief flooding his features. Richard nodded, tears brimming in his eyes. "Yes, we are." They stepped into the light, their hope hung heavy in the air, a new beginning fresh with possibilities. And as they emerged, the chaos behind them receded, leaving only the laughter of their shared futures echoing in their hearts. But as they basked in the warmth of their newfound freedom, Richard felt a stirring within him. Just then, a thought pierced through. They had survived the storm together, but there was still so much to rebuild. "Remember, our story is still being written," Maria said, her voice laced with earnestness. With those words echoing in their hearts, Richard smiled. Their paths ahead were now theirs, untethered from the dark shadows of the past. And before they took their next steps, Richard turned to the camera, his eyes gleaming with purpose. "Hey there, if you've enjoyed this ride through darkness and light, it's time to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss any of the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button right now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about the ending. And instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how this ends. You have to subscribe right now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share this.